What is up, my peepholes? This is your guy, Cly, and welcome back to Budget Tubing. Now today, what I'm going to be taking a look at is this little guy. This is the Beisiwoo USB condenser microphone, and it was provided free of charge for this review by the kind folks over at Beisiwoo. This is another gooseneck style condenser microphone, and I have to point out that it has a much smaller footprint than the last one I reviewed. And to go along with that smaller footprint, it also rocks a smaller price, coming in at just $16. Now, as for the specifics, this uses a 9 to 10 millimeter condenser capsule with a frequency response between 30 and 16,000 Hertz. And to be perfectly honest, that's not terrible. The previous gooseneck microphone I reviewed also used a capsule of that size, and heck, that's what my lavalier uses. Though admittedly, my lav is analog, and I believe the frequency response is a little bit broader. Though I will admit this mic is still in good USB company because that's the same size of capsule and similar frequency response to the Samsung Go mic when set to omnidirectional mode. Now there are a couple of things I want to point out about the body of this microphone, first and foremost being the shaft. And that is the fact that it's really good at holding position. I've yet to find a position where it really gives significant bounce back and resistance. It's going to sit in whatever position you put it in, and that can actually be very useful for when you're really trying to get a good omnidirectional pickup pattern by just putting it straight up so that everything comes in from the sides. Don't get any naughty ideas. Mind out of the gutter, people. And thinking about it, having it in the upright position is actually very convenient for pointing out this next feature. And if you haven't noticed yet, what I'm talking about is this right here. It's a button. But sadly, it is not the kind of button that I originally thought it was. When I first saw this microphone, I thought it had one of my top 3 features on microphones, and that is a dedicated mute button. Instead, what this is a power switch. When you hit that button, it interrupts the circuit and actually makes your computer think that you've unplugged the microphone. And while technically you could use that as a mute function, most software is not going to be happy with you if you do that. I know programs like Audacity, Fritcher, Voicemeeter, and heck, probably even Discord tend to get a little on the crashy side if you just spontaneously unplug the audio source that they're monitoring. Though it's not necessarily a bad thing that you don't have a dedicated mute button on this microphone, since most mics in this price range, and heck, multiple times this price range, are not going to have one either. Instead, you're left with a great feature for the security-minded folk because this way you can effectively unplug the microphone without actually having to disconnect it from your computer, and then programs aren't going to be taking a listen. That also makes keeping it on your desk a whole lot easier because most of the microphones I've reviewed in this series don't have a mute button either, so in order to make them stop listening to you, you have to keep unplugging the cable, and microphones like the Blue Snowball are kind of notorious for pooping out their USB port. That's the state mine was in when I got it. But that's enough about the build quality. Let me pull this shot out so that we can test the pickup pattern and see if it truly is omnidirectional. All right, I've got my microphone hooked into my laptop, my phone hooked onto the speaker stick, a graphic about to pop up right about now. So let's test this pickup pattern, shall we? Now, looking at this pickup pattern, I will say it seems to be more in the cardioid family, though it is doing a good job picking up everything going on behind the microphone. It's still blocking a little bit of the audio. However, like I mentioned earlier, if you want to get a true, full omnidirectional, you need something in this setup right here. So let's do this test one more time, and now that looked like a proper omnidirectional pickup pattern. Fortunately, it's not difficult to change the position of this microphone, and it holds it perfectly. Now that I'm done testing the pickup patterns, let's go ahead and move over to Audacity. And welcome to Audacity. Now, one thing I want to point out before going forward is the fact that this microphone is ridiculously sensitive. And when I say that, I mean I've got my digital gain set to just 5%, I'm about a foot or so away from the microphone, and yet I'm still coming in the negative 12 to negative 6 decibel range. Now, of course, this isn't necessarily a bad thing because this microphone is designed to sit on your desk, and that can actually be a boon for some types of content creation. If you're a streamer or a Let's Player using Facecam that just don't want to have a microphone sitting in your face, well, this will actually pick you up from your desk without having to bury the needle on gain and then need an additional bit of boosting to follow that up. I may or may not have had experiences with that kind of setup in the past. Anyway, before I go too in-depth about this, let's go ahead and hop over to Fritcher. And welcome to Fritcher. Now, once again, I don't have a frequency response chart to compare this readout to, but fortunately, the manufacturer was kind enough to list the frequency response range in the manual, and they claimed it's between 30 and 16,000 Hz. Of course, most of the manufacturers that I've covered in this series thus far would claim this readout means that the microphone actually responds between 20 and 20,000 Hz. And I'd actually agree with both assessments based on what I've seen thus far. Now, one thing I do want to point out is that there is a little bit of noise sitting in the 50 to 80 Hz range, though it seems to be sitting at just around negative 50 to negative 62 decibels, and by the time I mix this track down to a listenable volume, it'll probably be all but non-existent. Now, let's get back on the topic of the sensitivity of this microphone, because I still think it serves a purpose. Not only can you sit far away from the mic and have it sitting next to your computer or whatnot, but if you're conducting a conference call or an interview for a podcast, you don't have to have everybody huddling around the mic. And thinking of podcasts, there's one that I listen to where one of the hosts has to tell his co-host to talk into the microphone. So if you put a few of these little cheap guys around the room, they could probably compensate for that. And actually, doubling down on the cost, for the price, you're actually getting a microphone that performs amazingly well. In fact, I've listened back to my previous recording on the Audacity side of this test, and I actually was pleasantly surprised. It sounds similar to, if not slightly above, what my lavalier sounds like before I mix it in post. And if you like the audio that I get throughout my videos, well, this is what it sounds like raw, if not a little bit better than what I sound like raw. So keep that in mind. Maybe I should do a video talking about how to post-process your audio, and heck, maybe I'll learn a new trick or two along the way. Anyway, I've got a whole crap ton of these microphones to get back to reviewing, so until next time, this is your guy, Kalai, signing off.